Thanks for joining once again. Today's show covers the fact that Tesla sales are down in China and what are some of the implications of this. We have sort of three main points in that regard. The second thing we covered today is for those of you that are interested in options and our options class, it's an important time for Tesla's stock and therefore its options. And we move into that discussion as well. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks for joining us. If this is the first time on our channel, welcome. If you're a returning visitor, welcome back. Please also note your likes and subscriptions impact how we're ranked by Google and therefore how many folks watch our videos. So we appreciate you doing so. We're also on Patreon, and another way you could support the channel is in that regard as well. So let's dive into our discussion today of what's going on with China sales for Tesla. First of all, there's a number of headwinds that have hit the company there. We all know about the tariffs imposed by Donald Trump and the impact that's had on the sales for a lot of different companies, including Tesla in China. When the tariffs were removed briefly, the sales effectively doubled in a short period of time, because there are a lot more people that could afford to fit the vehicle into their budget at the lower number that didn't include tariffs. So I think that totally made sense. The second of three variables that we believe that's impacting sales for China is the fact that in Silicon Valley, there's a concept called cannibalization. What that means is that if a company doesn't bring out new products, they potentially lose to new competitors entering the market space with better product than they currently have. So it's in the best interest of any company to go ahead and introduce products that perhaps destroy sales in the short term, but set the company up for success and growth going forward in another frame. So the fact that Tesla is now taking orders for the Model 3 configurations means that those customers who might otherwise have purchased an X or an S are now inclined to wait it out and have a 3 configured and delivered rather than making a move towards the Model X or S. The third thing that's impacting what's going on with the Model X and S is that at every price point in gaps of about $10,000, there's a certain number of consumers that are appropriate fit for those vehicles. So in general, Tesla, we feel is really arrived at a spot where they are selling cars, but the usable marketplace for X's and S's at that price point isn't quite saturated. It is growing, but perhaps growing at a slow pace versus the number of vehicles and the demand that might be associated with vehicles in the lower price registry, which the Model 3 allows Tesla to enter. Now, sort of a bonus coverage on Tesla sales and why I believe the stock price was actually sort of hammered by 20 points when this was announced is the fact that we actually encountered an executive from China who indicated that there's an issue where in every major city in China, at least 2 EV manufacturers have introduced themselves with products. And additionally, we all know that BYD, until the Model 3 hit, was the #1 selling EV vehicle in the world with about 10,000 units a month in China, and their SUV product is about a $24,000 product with range under 100 miles. So the bottom line here is that there's a company called Nio. There's, in theory, another 20 Chinese companies producing electric vehicles that are set to come to market and be heard about over the next 6 to 8 months. So therefore, some of the EV sales that might be going to a Tesla or other better name brands can actually be consumed by lesser Chinese names. But the Chinese tend to be a consumer of the best brands because it's well known what the quality of execution might be for the products that come from non-Chinese manufacturers. So bottom line is that Tesla's doing fine in China. They have a fairly large installed base of superchargers as well as vehicles sold, and enjoy a pretty good relationship with the Chinese marketplace as a premium brand. And as the Model 3s hit, they'll start moving down market and pick up more sales. I don't think without an issue, based on the quality of what's been achieved in that marketplace previously. So I think the panic that was associated with the stock price is starting to abate, and I think that it will abate further as we go forward. So I don't think it's a major drag on the company per se. The other thing that I found interesting about what's going on in China and its ability to impact the stock of Tesla is the fact that right now, I think the huge problem that Tesla has that's lurking is just not enough Model 3s to fit, the marketplace demand. The United States is still facing a 2 to 4 month delay for you to get a configured Model 3 here. And that suggests that as we open up sales in the next couple of 3 weeks into both China and Europe, we're going to find out what the real demand is there. And again, our forecast is that there's 300,000 units of Model 3 demand in Europe and Asia, and that number would consume everything Tesla has to produce. So I think the biggest problem the company is going to have is not whether or not cars are selling. Obviously, the X and S's will continue to move at a slower pace because they're at a higher price point. But I do believe that you'll end up with that a phenomenon where there's going to be a sellout, and this sellout and inability to meet demand will exist for at least a year, if not 2. And as battery production rises, Tesla will be able to start to get into other products like the new Roadster and the Semi. So the bottom line is I think this is all good news for the Model 3, but bad news for vehicles like the Semi because they need the battery packs that are being consumed by the Model 3s. The next thing I wanted to cover today is focused on options. So right now, for those of you who are sort of taking our class and want to learn about trading options, etc., first, please note I'm not a registered rep. These are my opinions only, and therefore should be taken as such. Where we are in the options calendar is that if you watch the calendar, you'll notice the closer we get to an earnings announcement, the more volatile a stock potentially is, especially a stock like Tesla, because we seem to be saying this is the most important earnings announcement they'll ever do. But again, we'll say that this is probably the most important earnings announcement the company will ever have for a number of reasons. Number one, as you know, they have a bond payment due, and if the earnings are solid, as well as the reservation holder dollars, they can make the payments needed to keep the company moving and not have any issues. If the earnings blow away the number in terms of much greater than was anticipated by the marketplace, the stock price will then accelerate to some very high levels, allowing the stock price being higher gives Tesla, as we know, a whole bunch of flexibility when it comes to expanding the ability to issue more stock, hold on to the cash they've earned to further invest in the growth of the company becomes available. And as we've talked about in our other shows, $360 a share is where this occurs. The next thing, so bottom line is that there's a huge number of reasons why this is a big earnings announcement. In small and large ways, you'll notice that Tesla's hanging on to every dollar it possibly can because it helps feed the kitty of the amount of dollars they can show on the balance sheet heading into this really important period for the company. Now, what's implied by what we learned about how long it takes to get a Model 3 is that everything that's being built is being sold. The only delays that are occurring seem to be related to paperwork required to get these cars completed. Okay, good deal. I'm getting notices from folks, and I want to be able to comment at the end of the show, so my delay was to make sure I caught the comment before we get to the end of the show, and I remember what the comment was. So what's going on in the option space is that we're kind of in an interesting quiet period right now. As you've seen, any little news that comes out tends to move the stock up or down, good or bad. We've also had the issues with the general marketplace moving dramatically. I believe that the market will calm down as we move into the $45 a barrel oil zone, because everyone can adjust to what all this means in terms of the economy, as well as the earnings for big oil service companies and providers. So I think the market will mellow out, and then we can get on to the news of how the companies are doing, in particular how Tesla is doing. Now, we are now officially 4 weeks away from earnings coming out on a lot of companies, including Tesla. As we've reviewed in the past, there are three components: that price and option, that's time value, amount of time before it expires, that's delta, the amount of volatility that the stock is experiencing, and that's price proximity of the option to the current stock price. So with those three variables in mind, probably the lowest delta point at any time for options is actually in the next week to 10 days. As we get closer to earnings, delta starts to rise because there's a lot of people that don't know which way the stock is going to go, and the earnings are going to affect it. So peak delta in the pricing model is going to be the day before earnings are announced from the company. And so there are kind of three variables, I think, that are going to impact what's going on. Starting in about 10 days, after we get past the 30th, we'll know what the number of orders are for vehicles that will be delivered by the end of the year to meet the $7,500 U.S. standard for an EV credit. So I believe what will occur is Tesla won't announce that number, but what will start to happen is we'll find out if Tesla hit the 7,000 a week mark for the Model 3s that they've planned. And if that's the case, you know, if you do 4,500 a week that they've been produced since the last earnings, and then you roll in, let's say, 3 or 4 weeks of that 7,000 a week production, you have an average in that 5,500 range. So what you're looking at in terms of numbers produced is approximately 5,500 cars a week over an 8-week period, times $59,000 a car. And that sort of gives you a ballpark sense of what the revenue of Tesla has been for this period. And then everyone is going to determine what's going to happen to the stock price based on the calculations that I just gave you. The reason why I believe Tesla is a great company to play or be involved with options on is that there are people watching how many cars coming out of the building, how many registrations there are to the federal government, as well as Tesla's announcing numbers as well. So unlike Google or Apple or other companies, it can be hard to figure out, you know, what's going on. There's a lot of data that flows from the company that one can use to assess what's going on from an option standpoint. Now, this is purely what I think is going on and what will happen. It's my belief that what will happen is that starting in the next 2 weeks, we'll start getting analysts announcing where they think the stock price is going based on how the sales numbers we just talked about are. And it's my belief that Tesla will easily exceed the number, and I think they'll start to get towards record numbers that impress the analysts with the earning capability of the company, and that combination will end up driving the stock price. So clearly negative comments could come out, do come out a lot as people are trying to reduce the stock price. but we're definitely in a zone right now where the hedge funds need to pay the analysts to put out negative reports, because if they don't have those negative reports, the stock price will start spiking a lot higher, and that will destroy a lot of firms who've shorted the stock. Now, the follow-on here is that I think that if the analysts actually talk about the numbers being really, really solid on Tesla, based on the number of Model 3s that have been sold and the early signs of what's happening in European sales ordering, etc. As we've talked about before, when Tesla's stock price spikes, there's a lot of hedge funds that have to make a decision. Are they going to stay in as a negative entity towards Tesla, or are they going to face reality and say it's time to embrace the fact that they need to unwind their position before the stock goes significantly higher? So how much move should we expect from the stock price? Well, if you think about it, in the last earnings, Tesla went from about $260 to about $350, or almost $100 move in price, or 100-point move in price in about 3 days. So one of the reasons you want to get yourself together in terms of your preparations for options movements is that movements that happen for other stocks over 6 months to a year happen with Tesla in 2 or 3 days. And so you really want to be prepared with your position ahead of time, because the money that will be made in 24 to 48 hours is significant. And if you're not having set up your positions prior, you kind of lose out on that opportunity. The other thing here is that the stock price of Tesla should not move as much as it previously did, because there was some question about whether or not the company would be going into bankruptcy. And probably 50 points of the move that we just saw-ish relates to the fact that it's very clear that Tesla can earn its way to where it needs to go, rather than borrowing its way to where it needs to go in terms of production and having vehicles on the road that customers are enjoying. So this is the addition we would make at this point, is that if you're a long-term sort of options holder and not trying to do things in a very short term of a week or two, more like a month or two in terms of the options that you purchase, this is a really good time to purchase, because we're going to start seeing on a weekly basis the delta of the stock will start to rise, and the stock price can be relatively the same, but because of the increasing value of the delta on a weekly basis, you'll see that the value of that option will continue to rise heading into huge announcements that are coming up for Tesla. So I'm sort of closing out our options discussion for this week at this point. Look forward to any and all questions. Those of you who might have any interest or questions, feel free to fire. Look forward to text messages or emails or Facebook messages from those of you who are in the class, who've taken the time to read the books that I've asked about. Once I know you've read the book, it enables me to have conversations with you I can't have before. So please, hit me with a notice that you've read the books, and then we can introduce you to more sort of intense options activity related to the fact that you've actually read what it's about and sort of the risks and benefits, etc. There was a question or a statement posed earlier in the show that I stopped to read, and it was really getting into the fact that there's batteries being produced, as well as the after battery life in recycling. I agree that those are definitely worlds out there that need to be addressed. J.B. Straubel, the CTO of Tesla, actually has a recycling company that he put together outside of Tesla to address that very thing. So the answer I would say is that absolutely what's going to happen in recycling is an important discussion. What's happening in terms of productive capacity of batteries around the world, very big and important discussion, and I think all are worth noting and should be referenced. I formally, I wanted to note that I saw Jerry out there, and I saw a few others of you saying hello with comments. I want to thank you for your commentary. Hope your holiday season was great thus far, and you're preparing for the second one. I have my leftover turkey that I'm dreading that I have to eat right now. So, it's an interesting period of life where you have food in the fridge, but you kind of don't feel like eating it. Wanted to point out to you that this is one of the leg weights I use. Thanks for the comment, Jim. Tesla's definitely disruptive, and will have a huge impact, is having a huge impact. And the fact that they've been giving away a lot of technology to help others getting into the field, is part of their disruptive process. And the hedge funds truly are not. Buy and hold is a great strategy. It's done well for the last several years. Why not more? I chose to get into options because there are a lot of people who are trading the stock but may not have enough money, where a $10 or $20 increase in the stock price is insignificant. $10 or $20 could be 100% gain in the options price. So I agree with you, the buy and hold. Yeah, right now, you're right, Jerry. The comment was Tesla's battery production is unrivaled. I agree. They've got more productive capacity than anyone else, and will for the next year and a half, too. And hopefully they can sell a whole bunch of vehicles and establish a beachhead that's hard for others to replicate or destroy, but can add to over time. So I introduced you to my leg weights here because I just did my 20 on each leg. Wanted to encourage all of you to do the same leg lifts. Also wanted to note, don't eat within 2 hours of going to bed, preferably 4 hours so the food can digest. Also want to encourage you to take an omega-3. There's one of our show contributors who's a personal trainer, and she has me using a tennis ball underneath one behind my back for a period while driving to sort of release pressure in the lower back. I'm also using it under my foot to happen to have a Dunlop here, but I'm using it under my foot as a way to get a stretch in the plantar fasciitis. And as part of the regimen of doing the leg lifts, I'm also doing exercises related to underfoot, as you just saw me do. And so I wanted to encourage those of you who are on the health conscious tip to consider doing this as well. I actually found that I'd say that she suggested a tennis ball. I prefer a golf ball. It doesn't give as much, and so you have, I think, more of an impact as you're trying to get some exercise from it if you're doing the foot exercise I just described. Any rate, we always like to make sure that we're staying within our welcome hour of time. Want to thank all of you for joining us. Look forward to any and all comments. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Please like, subscribe. We could use your support on Patreon if you would. Any suggestions also for the show's improvement would be appreciated. As you heard today, our backup music, instead of growing in chants, was classical music that you've been hearing behind our show. We're open to suggestions that don't get us in copyright trouble, but enjoy your ability, or increase your ability to enjoy what we cover in the show. And really looking forward to any and all comments. Note that if they're constructive comments, we want to keep them to those. If you hate Tesla, this is a bad channel for you to hit, because we'll highlight issues for Tesla, but in general, we want the company to do well and provide a solution to a lot of issues other people don't as part of ownership of a Tesla. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Once again, thanks for joining us. Reminder, we're also on Facebook, where we post photos regularly of notes and things that we thought might be useful for the viewing public and owners, so it's another place to go check out periodically. Bye for now, and look forward to getting our truck show done in the next 24 hours, and look forward to sharing some interesting ideas that have popped up regarding the Tesla Semi. Have a wonderful day. In German, tschüss. French, au revoir. Hebrew, lehit hot. Farsi, choda hafez. Farvel, Dutch. Adios, Spanish. Ni hao ma, Chinese. And in Jamaica, we say, enough respect, walk, good man. And thanks for joining us. Have a great day.